Hello and welcome back to a continuation of the series of scale pre-painted figure unboxing and review videos on my channel. As promised, this time around I'll be looking at a One Piece character other than Nami, and who better than Sanji, whose lovey-dovey antics towards her notwithstanding, is the only Straw Hat pirate crew that she actually addresses with the honorific suffix kun, as in Sanji-kun, which to some fan circles is an indication of emotional attachment. But I digress. That's not what this video is about. It's about Bandai Spirit's Grandista Nero figure of Sanji. So let's get started with Sanji-kun's unboxing, shall we? Being not overly familiar with the Grandista line of pre-painted figures, I'm not totally sure as to the difference between the main Grandista line versus the alternate Grandista Nero line that Bandai also produces, like the Sanji figure you see before you. But from the online product descriptions and images, I can infer that Grandista Nero are versions with interchangeable parts and slight pose changes from the original Grandista version. For example, Grandista Nero Sanji here is seen carrying a tray of desserts and a smiling head version, as well as an alternate head part that has Sanji sporting an angry expression. In comparison, the original Grandista version of Sanji sees him in a classic pose with a cigarette and a serious expression. Anyway, let's first get to all the various pieces that make up this Grandista Nero figure of Sanji, which, as I've come to expect from either the Grandista or Grandista Nero line, comprise relevant pieces that are first and foremost protected by strong and thick cardboard padding that also serve to restrict movement of the figure's various parts when the product box is being handled either during transit or in a retail environment. This will of course in turn minimize damage to the parts of the figure, which themselves are wrapped in plastic, as you can see here, for yet more protection. Let's now transition into a fast-forwarded unwrapping section of the Grandista Nero figure of Sanji. Once we have all the parts nicely laid out on the work mat, I'll resume my commentary for the once-over section of the video. Grandista Nero Sanji comes in 5 separate pieces if you include the small plastic part that's used to stabilize the figure when it's being displayed in a standing pose. Let's start with the largest piece, which is an almost complete figure from his feet to shirt collar, missing only the left hand, neck and head, which we'll get to later. Sanji is wearing his post-timeskip attire of a black double-breasted suit with golden yellow buttons, as well as a yellow suit with a brown tie, together with black shoes to complete his ensemble. Paintwork on Sanji's attire comprised mainly of flat molded in colors of black, yellow and brown for his suit and shoes, shirt and tie respectively. There is yellow paint on his buttons, while a light yellow coating was airbrushed on the front as a form of highlight on his suit. Meanwhile, the first of 2 head options sees Sanji smiling, with his nicely shaded hair now covering his right eye. This shading extends to his neck, while facial details on the face look excellent, right down to his curly eyebrow and post-timeskip mustache and goatee. The second interchangeable head option sees Sanji with an angry expression, with similar paint shading on his neck and now spiky hair. With his mouth open, we have even more details in the form of his cleanly painted teeth and gums. His missing left hand is actually attached to a round grey tray and has pretty good skin tone shading for a prize figure, although that just made his unpainted fingernails stand out more. Atop the tray lies what is arguably the centerpiece of this one-piece Grandista Nero figure of Sanji, and it's a plate of vividly colored desserts, which to me looks like a combination of macaroons, ice cream, jam tart, banana and mango slices, all surrounding what appears to be a chocolate and whipped cream covered custard, topped with a red cherry. Paintwork and sculpt wise, the platter of desserts look fantastic both in terms of realism as well as in the bright and colourful hues. Last but not least, we have the stabilizing piece for Sanji's left foot that I assume is needed to compensate for the weight of the platter of desserts that's being held far out from the figure's center of gravity. Let's now assemble this Grandista Nero figure of Sanji, starting with the first of its two interchangeable parts, namely the angry head option. Of the two head options, I feel this one seems out of place with the pose Sanji is adopting. I feel that a better option would have been to include a lovey-dovey head option, i.e. one with hearts for eyes that we frequently see Sanji expressing when bringing food to Nami and Robin. While it's a shame I won't get to show off the cleanly painted teeth, gums and tongue on his open mouth, it's not the option that I'll be using for the display piece. Instead, my go-to option will be the head with Sanji happily smiling away. Next up will be to attach Sanji's left hand to his arm, namely the hand holding up the platter containing a plate of desserts. A specifically shaped pack on his left hand ensures there's only one way the hand will attach to the arm, thus removing any guesswork from the intended orientation of the plate of desserts. Another sign that this plate of desserts is the centerpiece of this figure is the way it's being thrust towards the forefront, thus easily catching one's eye. The last piece to fall in place is the display stabilizing part for Sanji's left foot. To me, it looks to be made out of soft plastic, which seems insufficiently strong to effectively play its role as a stabilizing piece. I guess we'll know for sure when we have a full 360-degree view of this Grandista Nero figure of Sanji, as we are going to do in the next section of the video that's coming up. Standing at an impressive height of 27.5 centimeters, this Grandista Nero Sanji certainly cuts an impressive figure when on display, especially from a front-facing view. It's only when you view Sanji from the side that you notice the significant forward-leaning angle that this figure seems to have. Now, I'm unsure if the notable forward-leaning angle was intentional on Bandai Spirit's part, but I believe they wouldn't have wanted such an acute angle. My guess is that soft plastic holder or stabilizing part isn't strong enough to securely hold Sanji's left foot level to the ground. As such, the outward positioning of the tray and plate of desserts, which shifts the figure's center of gravity towards the front, acts to pull the entire figure forward at an acute angle you see here. This pose is partly mitigated by the fact that fans know Sanji is perfectly able to pull off this extreme forward-leaning pose due to his strong legs. In fact, I think I've seen him doing such poses in the One Piece anime. But even then, it's my opinion the acute leaning angle of this figure is a bit much and looks off when viewed from the side. Overall though, especially when viewed from the front, the Grandista Nero figure of Sanji still looks excellent, with paint shading applied to his hair, skin tone and front of his black suit. Which brings about another gripe that I have for this figure, which Grandista Nami also suffered from. Her video link is included in the description below if you are interested to see it for yourself. For Nami, it was her jeans, and for Sanji, it's his black double-breasted suit. Both had paint highlights applied lightly on the front half over the original molded in colors of the plastic. But like Nami before this, paint highlights exist only on the front half, with the back of Sanji's suit left unpainted in its original molded in color. Highlights on the black suit consist of a thin light layer of yellow paint, which looks surprisingly good on the suit. Other additional paintwork includes some ochre-like shading on his hair, a monotone light yellow paint on his suit buttons, a seemingly orange-brown shading on his skin tone, as well as various painted details on his face. Excluding the desserts, the rest of this Grandista Nero figure of Sanji comprise a molded-in color scheme of black, yellow, brown, and flesh hues. taken in isolation, the limited palette color scheme is rather boring. Thankfully, there's also the extremely colorful dessert offering to be considered. From as far back as I can remember, I've always been fascinated by the plastic food known as shukuhin sanpuru, which is a type of food replica made out of plastic and commonly used on Japanese restaurant displays. This shukuhin sanpuru had always looked incredibly realistic to me, and the desserts being offered by Sanji on that platter is a perfect example of this unique Japanese art of fake food. All the individual dessert pieces, such as macaroons, ice cream, whipped cream, custard, fruit slices, and jelly, not only liven up the figure's color scheme, but also add some realism to the vignette, even one with an anime character. This full 360-degree view of Sanji's upper half also affords us a good view of the facial features on either the smiling or angry Sanji interchangeable head options. Although my personal preference is to use the smiling Sanji head option with this pose, when viewed solely in terms of painted facial features, I guess the Angry Sanji head option arguably looks better, in isolation at least, due to it having additional painted details like his gum and tongue, as well as being more expressive. But the long and short of it is, when it comes to both head options, they have excellently painted and sculpted details that have an incredible resemblance to Sanji of the Straw Hat Pirates. However, this close-up detailed look at the Grandista Nero Sanji's upper half unfortunately also highlights the sloppy paintwork done on his yellow suit buttons. It seems as if almost no effort was made to paint within the edge of the buttons. I find this to be unforgivably lazy paintwork on what is a prominent part of the figure. In contrast, Sanji's legs were thankfully yet another part of this Grandista Nero figure that was exceptionally well done. Sanji's legs are almost a character unto themselves and are an iconic part of his fighting persona. His legs are excellently sculpted, portraying a sense of pent-up power. But in terms of paint, Sanji's black suit pants don't fare as well, because as mentioned earlier, yellow paint highlights were applied only to the front-facing half of what is essentially a glossy monotone molded-in color of black. Having an excellent lightness factor, coupled with reasonably good paint shading on the hair and skin tone, as well as highlights on the front half of the black suit, not to mention that incredibly looking dessert platter, one would think it would be a no-brainer to award a good rating to this Grandista Nero figure of Sanji. But I'm afraid it's not that simple. There are quite a few cons against this pre-painted figure, led primarily by the seemingly acute leaning angle, followed by the lack of paint highlights on the back of Sanji's suit and the sloppy paintwork on his suit buttons. In the end, it boiled down to a rationalization of what I discern to be the less than ideal aspects of this pre-painted prize figure by Bandai Spirits and weighing its effect on the more positive attributes of Grandista Nero Sanji. I love the two interchangeable head options as they both accurately resemble Sanji's looks. And I also love the fake plastic desserts because it's one of the very few Sanji figures that is paired with his passion, namely food. These positive attributes alone, when coupled with the nicely sculpted body, makes for a figure with an excellent likeness to its subject matter. Now I can just about overlook the lack of paint highlights on the back of his suit, seeing that when displayed, it's an area that's largely hidden from one's immediate viewpoint. And I can even forgive the sloppy paintwork on his suit buttons as it's not too noticeable from afar. But I cannot for the life of me get over the acute angle that this Grandista Nero figure of Sanji is leaning, even when taking into consideration the character's propensity to pose at rather steep angles when in a fighting stance. Maybe that's just it. Sanji isn't in a fighting stance here. He's holding a dessert platter which kind of feeds into the visual aberration of this pose. At this acute angle, my mind is telling me that the desserts should already be falling off the plate. So that leaves me to believe it's a failing of the stabilizing piece on his foot, which may lead to stability issues in the future, with long-term stress on his foot causing plastic warping issues. A workaround I can think of is to either place an adhesive tack on his left heel or use a more permanent solution of supergluing that heel to a base. Neither seems appealing to me, as the former may not work long-term since the center of gravity is extended too far out to the front, while the latter is too drastic a measure I shouldn't have to take. Taking all this into consideration, I'm giving this Grandista Nero figure of Sanji a rating of Platinum or B rank. Am I willing to keep him in my collection, knowing what I do about his overly leaning issues? Well, yes, I do. I kind of like how he looks in my One Piece collection, and I'm willing to try some workarounds in the future to solve this leaning problem. Yet I cannot quite recommend this figure wholeheartedly, because if I had known of this issue beforehand, then honestly I may have passed on him altogether. On that seemingly oxymoronic note, I wish to bid you adieu as we have come to the end of yet another pre-painted figure unboxing and review on my channel. Thank you so much for watching. I leave you with a 360-degree view of Sanji with some adhesive tack on his left heel. It has made only a slight difference to his leaning angle, so maybe there's a better solution out there. If you have one, please do let me know in the comments below. So until we meet again, be well and be happy.